Kevin's secret is exposed. Kevin had just beaten the school's martial arts instructor, Frank Carter, outside on the practice field, with Professor Murdoch and half the school watching. The match wasn't even close, and it was an embarrassing defeat for Carter. Several students who really liked Carter rushed towards Kevin, who was standing there with his foot on his opponent's chest. "How dare you treat our instructor like this?" one of them screamed. Kevin turned and threw them one by one as they attacked, barely moving his own body. The students were flung about in all directions and lay there on the ground wondering what had just happened. "Try that again and I'll break your legs." Kevin pressed his foot down on Carter's ribs and you could hear a couple of them crack. It was pretty impressive to everyone who was watching. They started to see that Kevin might not be so useless after all. Phoebe was also starting to see Kevin a little differently after this. "Will you admit you were wrong?" Kevin looked down at Carter and smirked. "I'll never give up." Carter stared at Kevin maliciously. "Listen to me, you bastard. You'd better kill me now or I'll come back and kill you later." "I simply asked if you were wrong." Kevin roared loudly as he pressed his foot harder on Carter's chest. Frank Carter felt as if his internal organs were being flattened. But how could he give in to Kevin in front of almost all the students in the school? "Just say you were wrong and I'll let you go." Kevin pressed on Carter's ribs even harder. Blood started to seep out of Carter's mouth, but he kept clenching his teeth and didn't say a word. "Honey, please stop. If you push down any harder, Mr. Carter may not be able to survive." Lily quickly ran to Kevin to persuade him to show some mercy. "I asked you if you were wrong." Kevin didn't pay attention to Lily and applied a little more pressure. Almost everyone there heard a series of loud clicks that sounded like firecrackers. Carter opened his mouth and screamed in agony. Kevin had broken the rest of his ribs. "I give in. I admit I was wrong. Please stop," he cried out desperately. "Now that we've gotten that out of the way, why don't you apologize to my wife?" Kevin ordered him calmly. I'll apologize, but can you please let me do it from down here? I don't think I can stand up." Frank Carter pleaded so quietly you could barely hear him. Lily hurried over and tugged on Kevin's sleeve. "Forget about it, honey. I'm not that angry with him anymore. As long as he stops harassing me, that'll be fine." But Kevin was still pretty pissed at the guy. "Did you hear what my wife said, Carter?" Kevin sneered at the defeated man as he put his hand on Lily's shoulder. "Okay, I promise that I'll never bother Lily again." Even though Carter was trying to look compliant, you could see the venom in his eyes. Just as Kevin was about to reply, everyone heard a loud whooshing noise and a large shadow flew over them. "Is that a Bell 525? Kevin was startled for a moment as he admired the luxury helicopter that's nicknamed the Relentless. As the chopper descended, the crowd dispersed underneath it, clearing a space for it to land. A thin figure stepped out, gazing around at the enormous crowd. The man's eyes fell on Carter, who was barely recognizable in his current condition. "Who's responsible for this unauthorized gathering? Don't you know the college's rules and regulations?" He was quite old and his voice was a little hoarse. "Vice President Shepard, to what do we owe the pleasure?" Professor Murdoch stepped forward and approached him uneasily. She knew the elderly gentleman. Harley Shepard was the vice president of the Chicago branch of the School for the Healing Arts. He was also heavily involved in physical and martial development and had been an enforcer many years ago. "What are you doing here, Professor Murdoch?" Shepard said softly. "It seems to me that the school's faculty has been slacking off lately. You and Mr. Carter obviously can't control the students." "Vice President Shepard, you may have misunderstood." Professor Murdoch wanted to explain, but she didn't know how to do it. All of a sudden, Sherwin Blair stepped forward and spoke to Mr. Shepard. "Sir, I want to report to you that Kevin has been disrespectful. He beat his instructor for no reason at all and injured several students in the process." Mike also stepped up to denounce Kevin. "Vice President Shepard, as student leader, I request that you severely punish Kevin Williams. A terrible influence like him shouldn't be allowed to stay in this school." "Oh, really?" Shepard slightly turned his head to look at Kevin. "Are they talking about you?" Kevin had advanced enough in his training to recognize someone whose development was far superior to his own. His body shivered for a moment. "Yes, they are." Kevin, who had recovered from his surprise, answered plainly and directly. He thought that if the school's vice president only believed one side of the story and didn't try to look for the truth, then the school was doomed anyway, and it didn't matter if he got thrown out.
That's interesting.
Shepard's eyes flashed a look of surprise.
It's rare for someone to be so accomplished at such a young age.
Don't worry, sir. I'll take care of this matter, Professor Murdoch reassured the vice president. Even though the professor had a very high rank in the Union, she still had to be very polite to Shepard.
No, that won't be necessary. Mr. Carter has already been fined and placed on suspension for similar actions in the past,
Shepard explained.
I'll handle this.
Yes, sir. How could Carter argue with him? He had to bite the bullet and accept his punishment.
As for you, Kevin, come with me.
Shepard turned toward the faculty office building and started to head there without giving any further explanation. Kevin! Lily was worried about what would happen to him. Don't be afraid, honey. I'll go and have a chat with the vice president. Kevin patted her shoulder lovingly. Just head back to class. Wait for me in the parking lot after school and we'll go shopping together. Good idea. Lily nodded enthusiastically. Professor Murdoch left with Kevin, and then the crowd broke up as the students left one after another. Vice President Shepard's office was on the 7th floor. When Kevin and Professor Murdoch arrived, he was sitting behind his desk holding a book.
Professor Murdoch, please head back to your office. I'll let you know if I need anything from you.
Shepard gestured politely toward the door. Vice President. She really wanted to say something to help Kevin.
What's the matter? Are you afraid that I'll bully one of your students?
Shepard joked as he gave her a disarming smile. Yes, sir, as you wish. Professor Murdoch wasn't in the mood to tangle with him. She took a long look at Kevin and quickly left the office. In an instant, the room was quiet. Kevin was looking at Harley Shepard and decided that there was nothing unusual about him. He didn't look any different than any ordinary elderly man. But Kevin knew very well that someone like Harley Shepard was a lot like his mentor, the Night King. You had no idea what they were capable of just by looking at them. That was the worst kind of opponent.
Are you the same Kevin Williams who was thrown out of the New York City Williams family a few years ago for colluding with outsiders and stealing family funds? And the same one who's got a reputation as the good-for-nothing son-in-law of the Jones family in Chicago?
Shepard said slowly. Did you bring me here just to insult me? Kevin's expression was very serious. He didn't know why Shepard had dredged up all those lies.
Don't forget that the school investigated everyone's family background before admission. That was announced on the first day of classes.
Having said that, Shepard suddenly got up and took a file from his desk and handed it to Kevin.
But I recently did some investigation of my own and found out some interesting things about you.
Kevin opened the folder and he was stunned by what he saw. Shepard explained what was in the file.
Over the last 3 months, your behavior has suddenly become quite mysterious. You're in the habit of spending tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars at a time. You have contacts with notable personalities like Mitchell Cook and Gilbert Rhodes in Chicago, and you even went to prison where you socialized with members of the Alliance and the Myriads.
Shepard slowly walked behind Kevin's chair and patted him on the shoulder.
Some time ago, you donated tens of millions to the disaster fund, so the school gave you special permission to enter the library. You may not know it, but I'm usually on the 13th floor.
When Kevin heard this, his eyes grew wide. He knew that there were many master herbalists and other advanced practitioners in the library, but he would never have expected that Harley Shepard was one of them.
You chose a book on developing cardiac power. That's really something you could have developed through regular practice. It was an unusual choice, so I'm very curious about one thing. There are so many precious resources in the library. Why didn't you choose one of the others?
Shepard's tone was relaxed and empathetic, the kind of voice that made you trust him. It's okay if you get directly to the point with me, sir. Kevin was already starting to panic now that he knew that his relationship with the Alliance and the Myriads was no longer a complete secret. Shepard smiled and continued to talk as he walked around his office and absently straightened some books on his shelves.
Don't worry. I'm just chatting with you casually. I've thought of a couple of possibilities. One is that you entered the school with some unknown purpose, To tell you the truth, you've already moved far beyond anything we can offer you here. The only thing that comes to mind is that you're interested in the consolidation technique. So when you went to the library's special collections section that day, you had a specific goal in mind, but because of the time constraints, you couldn't find it. You had to pick something so that nobody would be suspicious, so you grabbed a random book to take with you.
Then Shepard added with a smile,
Tell me, son, who's your mentor? Is he with the Alliance or the Myriads?
That's not very funny, sir. Kevin protested a little.
Really? But I think it's funny.
Then Shepard said,
Nadia Alexander told me a few days ago that she wanted to send you to the Herbalist Society as a special student.
Would you let me go there? Kevin didn't seem nervous at all. He knew exactly what Shepard meant by his comment.
Of course not. In the past 50 years, the Herbalist Society has attracted too many fine young talents. You've already shown incredible promise. As a senior member of the faculty, I wouldn't let you go easily,
Shepard replied candidly. Is the school's dean in today? Kevin asked casually.
Why are you interested in the dean?
Shepard looked at Kevin with curiosity but couldn't figure out what he had in mind. Everyone knows about the dean's great accomplishments. If I could see him, that would help a lot, Kevin replied with a smile.
Unfortunately, the dean is out of town and won't be back for another month.
Shepard put his hands behind his back and walked over to the window. When Kevin left and closed the door, Shepard's face softened into a thoughtful smile.
It's a pity that I didn't become his mentor first.
The vice president shook his head and sighed. When he got outside, Kevin took a deep, long breath and realized that his clothes were soaked with sweat. He could feel his pulse quickening. Kevin returned to the classroom and ignored everyone's curious glances as he played with his cell phone under his desk. He was confident that he wouldn't get in any trouble for it this time. Professor Murdoch had just taken her elevation pill, so she wouldn't be too strict with him. When classes were finally over for the day, Kevin went to the parking lot. Lily had been waiting for him for 5 minutes. Are you worried? Kevin asked gently. The vice president didn't give you too much trouble, did he? Lily said worriedly. He just chewed me out a little. Not too much trouble, Kevin said with a smile. Let's catch a bus and head down to the farmer's market. Lily nodded and got on the bus with Kevin. An hour later, they hopped off at the outdoor market down the street from the condo. Kevin got a few dollars worth of potatoes, some greens, and a few tomatoes and fresh fruit. Lily watched him with an odd expression on her face as he bargained with the salespeople to get the best price he could. Kevin, I had no idea you could bargain so well, Lily remarked as he walked over to her with several bags of produce. Well, I spent a lot of time shopping for groceries for you and your mother. Kevin puffed himself up like he was bragging and gave her a big grin. Lily's eyes started to well up with tears and she murmured, I'm sorry I didn't treat you too well back then. It was wrong not to show you I cared. It's all right, Lily. That's all in the past. We need to live in the present and look forward to the future. Next time, I'll really impress you and get them to pay me to take their fruit. Kevin made a joke to lighten the atmosphere a little. Oh, Kevin. Lily hugged her husband around the neck and gave him a big kiss on the cheek. Just for that, I'm going to cook you a delicious meal tonight, he replied. Then the two of them walked the rest of the way to the building. For the rest of the week, Lily and Kevin spent a lot of time with each other. They went to the farmer's market, cooked, even did housework together. After all the troubles they'd seen, it was a good change to spend such a pleasant week together. But would it last? The following weekend, Kevin and Lily were tidying up the apartment when suddenly the doorbell rang. Honey, go see who it is, would you? Lily wiped the sweat from her forehead. No problem. Kevin didn't even bother to put down his mop on the way to the door. Who is it, honey? Lily asked from the other room. Hey, bro, I'm back, the woman said to Kevin with a slight smile. She gave off a smart, energetic vibe as she stood there chewing a piece of gum. She was wearing a short-sleeved blouse and a white coat with a pair of tight jeans that showed off her figure. My God, what are you doing here? Kevin said as he quickly backed away from her. Is that any way to talk to your favorite cousin? Don't you want me to visit you in your new digs? Let me give my little sister a hug. Then she opened her arms wide. She was Nicole Jones, Lily's cousin. She wasn't a native of Chicago, but from time to time she stopped in to visit Lily for a few days. Nicole could be a little carefree at times, but she never took a dislike to Kevin. Whenever she came to town, she teased Kevin so much that she couldn't stop laughing. But Kevin let her ribbing roll right off his back because she was never malicious. "What are you doing here, Nicole?" Lily was also very surprised when she got to the door and saw her cousin. "You mean I'm not welcome here? I'm not intruding, am I?" Nicole hugged Lily and patted her on the back. "You seem to be getting better and better every time I see you. Kevin must be taking good care of you." Her emphasis on the word care made Lily blush, and it made Kevin feel a little embarrassed too. Everything Nicole said seemed to have a double meaning. Kevin had been married to Lily for more than 3 years, and he wanted to take care of Lily the way Nicole implied, but they just hadn't had the chance. "Don't tease me, Nicole." Lily lowered her head shyly. "Why should you be shy when you're both married?" Nicole saw through Lily's little secret. Then she changed the subject. "Have you missed your big sister? It's really been such a long time. Kevin can sleep in another room and we'll spend the night gossiping and catching up, just like old times." Before Lily could agree, Kevin jumped in and said, "No way. It's either that or I'll sleep in your room. Don't worry, I won't mind. Besides, it's not like I haven't seen your body before." Nicole joked as she laughed loudly. When Kevin heard this, he suddenly felt incredibly self-conscious. Nicole was talking about something that happened just after he and Lily got married. Kevin was taking a bath and didn't lock the door. Nicole was looking for Lily and went into the bathroom. When she opened the door, she saw Kevin buck naked. "Come on, Nicole, that's enough. You can sleep in my room tonight." Then Lily turned to Kevin and said, "Honey, is it okay if you sleep in the guest room?" "Oh, I don't mind. I'll let you two catch up with each other," Kevin replied considerately. Then he turned to Nicole and said, "Hey, what would you like to eat? I'll go get some takeout for us." Without waiting for her to answer, Kevin darted out the door. Who knows what else Nicole would say if he hung around and let her keep talking. About an hour later, Kevin came back with a load of gourmet food. As soon as he walked in, he could hear the sound of women whispering in the living room. Now Rachel had joined Lily and Nicole, and the three of them were sitting on the sofa making fun of each other like they usually did when they got together. About a half an hour after Kevin left, Rachel had gotten a call from Nicole and quickly rushed to her car after she finished something she was working on for the Salix Leaf Hotel. The impromptu party was in full swing and Kevin felt a little out of place. "Hey, can you watch what you're throwing on the floor? I just vacuumed this morning." Kevin popped his head out of the kitchen to warn them. "Hey, is Kevin back?" Nicole asked as she gave him a crooked smile. When Rachel saw Kevin, she quickly got up from the sofa and said hi. Her attitude was a lot different after he hired her to manage the complex. "I've come all the way to Chicago and you don't even cook for me? Let's see what kind of takeout you've got." Nicole patted her stomach. "I'm starving." "Come and see. Is this good enough for you?" Kevin proudly pointed to the spread on the kitchen counter. "Well, let me see if I approve," Nicole joked as she trotted into the kitchen. Seeing Nicole and Kevin teasing each other like that made Rachel and Lily start laughing. Nicole and Kevin weren't sure if they were enemies or just didn't agree on things. Anyway, once they got together, they always argued, and Kevin usually lost the argument. After she saw the lobster, steak, salads, desserts, and other delicious choices in the kitchen, Nicole was stunned. "What's wrong? Don't you like what I brought back?" Kevin lifted his chin a little and smiled broadly. He was sure he'd won this battle. "Kevin, are you nuts? How much did this meal cost? We could have just had burgers and fries. This is way too extravagant. When Aunt Dorothy gets back, she's going to let you have it." Nicole had never been very diplomatic. As far as she knew, Kevin didn't have a lot of money and not much social status. This meal had to cost a fortune. Dorothy was bound to get angry with him. "It doesn't matter. Nicole, you can eat to your heart's content." Then Kevin gave her a reassuring look. Of course, he didn't go out and buy this stuff. He called Mitchell Cook and asked him to send some of his people from the hotel kitchen with a small banquet. It was fancy enough for a state dinner, let alone lunch. Did you win the lottery or something? Nicole reached out and put her palm on Kevin's forehead. Nope, your temperature's normal. I guess you're not delirious. Nicole, do you want to eat or not? Kevin grumbled. Hell yeah! Let me get my sisters. Nicole stopped teasing Kevin. She went back to the living room and picked up where they'd left off, arguing about movies, podcasts, whatever. When they finally sat down at the table, Nicole took a bite of her lobster and said, Lily, I haven't been to Chicago in a really long time. Do you want to go shopping later? Sure, I can go with you, but Rachel is pretty famous now. If she goes out in the street, she may attract a crowd. Lily said a little jokingly, but actually it was the truth. Is that true, Rachel? Nicole asked in surprise. Of course it's true. Not only is Rachel the manager of the best hotel in Chicago, but she's also the most eligible young woman in the city. Lily passed Kevin a salad bowl and a fork. Don't listen to Lily's nonsense, Nicole. I'm just a simple office worker. When Rachel said this, she glanced over at Kevin. He didn't seem to mind her saying that. Since we can't go shopping, why don't we go out and do karaoke? Nicole was always restless. If she spent the day cooped up, she'd feel miserable. That's not a bad idea. Our hotel just opened a new karaoke bar that's getting really popular. I haven't tried it yet, but I heard it's great. Rachel was excited to go down there and take a look around. Do you want to waste a beautiful day like this in a karaoke bar? Kevin whispered. I think you three might as well go shopping. What do you mean, you three? Aren't you going too? Nicole asked with a slight frown. Honey, don't you want to go out with us? Lily looked at Kevin and jokingly batted her eyelashes. Come on, Kevin, let's all go out together. Otherwise, it'll be boring for you to stay at home all alone. Rachel also tried to persuade him. Well, since you insist, I'll try my best to clear my social calendar. Kevin laughed as he took a bite of an eclair. A little over an hour later, Kevin was walking along with the three women on the street, attracting the attention of lots of people. The three women were very attractive and got a lot of envious looks, but Kevin looked out of place with them. As usual, he was dressed in crappy clothes and looked like he didn't belong. That attracted as much attention as Lily, Rachel, and Nicole. As soon as the four of them entered the mall, Nicole immediately got excited. Wow, that looks like Flo Lambeau, the hottest new star in the country. I heard that Flo recently signed a contract with Williams Media to hold 3 charity performances in Chicago, Rachel explained enthusiastically. Kevin, let's go and see if we can't take a picture with her. Lily grabbed Kevin by the arm and dragged him towards the stage. Flo Lambeau was extremely popular and the shopping mall was packed. The four of them managed to get to the front row, but Nicole was pushed by someone and knocked down some of the props. What's the matter with you? Watch what you're doing. 2 burly security guards quickly came over and started giving her grief. Kevin started to frown when he heard them talking like that. Before he could say anything, Rachel had already stood up for Nicole. What are you shouting about? It was an accident. Somebody bumped into her. Then she added, and you should be a little more polite. The guard got a nasty look on his face and threatened, if you keep making trouble, you're out of here. Rachel put her hands on her hips and snapped back. No way. Just then, somebody interrupted them. Rachel, when did you get here? A well-dressed man quickly walked over to her. When the 2 security guards saw him, they greeted him respectfully. Mr. Nassau. Do I know you? Rachel looked at him but couldn't quite place him. How could you forget me, Rachel? I'm Chuck Nassau. We met when my family was working on the contract with the Salix Leaf Hotel. Chuck seemed practically excited to see her. His family had a production contract with Williams Media. As part of their deal, they got to arrange an informal concert at the mall. So Chuck was there to make sure that everything was going okay. Oh, of course, Chuck Nassau. Sorry about that, I definitely remember you. Rachel was a little embarrassed for forgetting. Then Chuck turned to the security guards. What just happened? How can you 2 be so rude to President Butler? Suddenly, Nicole tugged on Rachel's sleeve. Hey, can you do me a favor and let me take a picture with Flo Lambeau? I'm a big fan of hers." When Lily heard this, her eyes lit up. She wanted to get a photo too. Out of the four of them, Kevin was the least enthusiastic. The concert was beautiful and her singing was lovely, but since he took over Williams Media, Kevin had seen dozens of stars, and he'd stopped caring about autographs a long time ago. "Mr. Nassau, do you think you can help me?" Rachel asked with a smile.
"For you, anything. It would be my pleasure."
After Chuck replied with a laugh, he turned his head and glared at the two security guards.
"What are you two still doing here? Do you want a tip?"
The guards grumbled as they walked away. Just then, Flo finished her set and headed backstage for a wardrobe change.
"Come with me."
Chuck seized the opportunity to catch Flo when she had a free moment. He couldn't believe his luck running into Rachel here. If Chuck could make friends with her, it might help his entire family. Then someday he might climb the ladder in the family company. It would definitely be worth the effort to set up an impromptu meet and greet.
"Hello, Miss Lambeau. I have some friends who would like to take a picture with you. Don't worry, they won't take up too much of your time,"
Chuck said with a smile. "Mr. Nassau, I hope you can understand this, but my visit is a contractual charity performance. There are no provisions to meet with any fans. Please send them away." Flo Lambeau didn't even look at Rachel. Nicole got a sour look on her face and Lily looked very embarrassed.
"It would just be a quick photo,"
Chuck started to explain, but Flo cut him off. "I've made it very clear. Please leave at once and don't delay me. I have to go back on stage." Chuck turned around and smiled apologetically at Rachel and Lily. He hadn't expected Flo to be so uncooperative, but there wasn't anything more he could do. She was a big star and he couldn't force her, could he? Kevin, who hadn't opened his mouth yet, suddenly blurted out, "Is your time really that precious?" Everyone turned around and looked at him. After all, Flo Lambeau was a celebrity. Everybody was interested in setting up a photo with her. "Who are you?" she said impatiently. "If you still want to see the rest of my performance, you should go back and take your seats. If not, I'll have security show you the door." How stuck up can you be? Rachel couldn't believe that Flo was using this kind of tone with Kevin. "Mr. Nassau, please send them away. I don't want to see them again." Flo was in no mood to continue the discussion. Chuck was very depressed by her reaction. He didn't expect that things would turn out like this. On the one hand, she was a famous star, but on the other hand, Rachel was very influential in Chicago. Chuck was caught between a rock and a hard place and had no idea what to do. "I wouldn't be so stuck up if I were you. If my wife and her friends hadn't asked to take some photos with you, we wouldn't even be here. I'd rather be in the mall having a hot dog." Kevin really let her have it. But since Flo didn't know who Kevin was, she didn't really care what he thought. That was about to change. The onlookers were furious to hear Kevin talk to her like that.
"Who is this kid? The way he's dressed, he shouldn't even go out in public."
They were ready to drag Kevin out and throw him into the street. Flo Lambeau was also infuriated by Kevin's insulting tone. "Mr. Nassau, I hope you can give me an explanation for this intrusion." Chuck got a panicked look on his face. He really didn't want to make a bad impression on Rachel. Suddenly someone shouted, "Hey, that's the guy who's been mooching off the Jones family." This really got the crowd going. They all started calling Kevin names and threatening to beat him up. Not that he couldn't have handled them, of course. That's when Chuck suddenly realized that he'd heard that Rachel was friends with Lily, who was a member of the Jones family. He figured that Kevin was just trying to show off because he was one of Rachel's acquaintances. Chuck thought that maybe he could turn this to his advantage and save the situation. Suddenly, Nicole turned around and shouted at the rowdy fans, "What are you all yelling about? You don't know anything about him." As far as Nicole was concerned, even though Kevin didn't have much potential, he'd always been very good to Lily, Dorothy, and her. So Nicole absolutely wouldn't allow anyone to insult Kevin in front of her. Chuck struggled to apologize to Rachel.
"I'm sorry, but this is all my fault. But could you please ask your friends to restrain themselves? After all, this is a public place and Flo is a well-known celebrity. She doesn't have time to talk with any Tom, Dick, or Harry who walks in off the street."
Come on. If she'd just said yes, we would have been done by now. It's taken her longer to argue with us than it would have to snap a quick photo,"
Nicole retorted as she took Lily and Kevin by the hand and started to walk away. Even though she was ready to give up, you could see the disappointment in Nicole's eyes. As they were leaving, they could hear Flo grumbling about Kevin's rudeness. "Don't be angry, Miss Lambeau. He's not worth getting angry over." Chuck quickly smiled and tried to pacify her. Kevin immediately stopped in his tracks when he heard that. He turned around and gave Flo a cold stare. "What did you just say? I'd like to hear you repeat that." "Do you really want to hear it again? You're just a nobody and you'll never amount to anything." Now that Flo Lambeau thought she knew something about Kevin, she wasn't worried about his reaction. "You're a piece of crap. Just because you're here with Rachel doesn't mean anything to me. If you mess with me, you'll see what I do to you." Chuck snarled as he looked over at Kevin. "You two are a real class act," Kevin replied to him. "If you don't apologize right this second, this concert is over." "You've got some nerve talking to me like that." Chuck was so angry his lips were quivering and you could see a vein popping out on his forehead. "I'll have security remove you from the property." "Don't you dare!" Rachel took a step forward to protect Kevin and the others. "I'm the general manager of the property and you'll do no such thing." Rachel was angrier than she'd ever been in her life. The onlookers had no idea who she was and started to whisper to each other. "My God, is she really the general manager of the Salix Leaf Hotel?" They also knew from all the reports in social media that she was backed by a mysterious but powerful figure. No wonder Kevin had been so snippy with Flo. He knew that he could get away with his behavior because of his friend's ties. The security guard decided to wait and see how it would play out rather than risk taking the wrong side. Chuck was also stunned. He never expected Rachel to speak up for Kevin like that. Now he had to figure out how to apologize to her. "Kevin, Rachel, let's get going," Lily said very sensibly. "That's right. We don't want to take any crummy pictures anyway. And I won't be going to any more Flo Lambeau movies either. Someone like her doesn't deserve to be a star." Nicole was no longer Flo's biggest fan. Kevin was determined to teach Flo a lesson, and with his connections at Williams Media, he could do it. As the saying goes, one bad apple spoils the bunch. Williams Media couldn't risk their reputation with someone like her, and they'd find a new star right away anyhow. "I don't deserve to be a star? Who the hell do you think you are? I wouldn't take a picture with you if you got down on your knees and begged me." Flo was so mad she started to huff and puff while she was talking. "Well, I guess I'll have to show you who I am." Kevin took out his cell phone and called Miss Wilson at Williams Media. Miss Wilson answered in her usual professional tone of voice. "What can I do for you, Mr. President?" "What's our company's relationship with Flo Lambeau?" Kevin asked directly. "She's made 2 films this past year and both of them were funded by our company. Because of her recent popularity, we arranged for her to put on several charity performances in Chicago." Miss Wilson noticed Kevin's tone of voice and asked him if Flo had done something to tick him off. "Not only did she insult me, but she was rude to my wife and her good friends. Our rising star absolutely ruined their weekend. I don't think there's a place for someone like her in our organization going forward. She's not a good ambassador for our brand. I think you know what to do." When Kevin finished speaking with her, he hung up his phone and put it back in his pocket. "Kevin, do you need me to?" Rachel didn't finish what she was saying, but he knew what she meant. "I don't think so," Lily said in a low voice. She knew that Rachel was very famous, but after all, it wasn't like Kevin was in charge of the entertainment industry. "Don't worry, Lily. I'll straighten things out for Nicole." Kevin comforted her as he squeezed her hand gently. Then he turned to Flo Lambeau and said, "This is your last chance. Are you going to apologize to her or not?" "Are you high or something?" Flo Lambeau replied smoothly as she flared her nostrils. Chuck kept his mouth shut the whole time. He didn't know which of them he should help. If he accidentally said something wrong, his entire family might suffer for it financially. "Well, I guess you've sealed your fate." Kevin shook his head incredulously. All the onlookers were sure that Kevin was bluffing. After all, how could this young guy dressed in rags have any power to affect the great Flo Lambeau? They all laughed at him like he was some kind of fool. While they were laughing and mocking Kevin, the lights in the mall began to dim as if there was a sudden power failure. Everyone looked at each other in confusion. Was it a coincidence? Flo Lambeau's eyes suddenly grew wider. Whenever she performed, it was in her contract for the venue to ensure that there wouldn't be any equipment failures. There was only one explanation for the sudden power failure. Kevin's phone call had actually had an effect, and that effect was enormous. "Go out and find out what's going on, right now," Chuck excitedly yelled at the security guards and other staff members around him. Then Flo Lambeau's assistant ran up to her in a hurry. "Ma'am, your phone." Looking at the flustered expression on her assistant's face, Flo immediately realized that something had definitely gone wrong. "This is Flo. What can I do for you, sir?" Flo was extra nervous and extremely polite when she got on the phone. "What the heck have you been doing?" Lewis Kennedy yelled into the phone. Everybody could hear his voice blaring out of the earpiece. "I'm putting on a charity show in Chicago, but I've been dealing with a bunch of troublemakers. One of them looks like a real bum and he just threatened to get even with me. Now the power's gone out and the staff is looking into it." Flo tried her best to explain without making herself look bad. "You're a real spoiled brat," Kennedy growled at her. "Do you know who you just offended?" "Why? Is there something wrong?" Flo asked doubtfully. Since her last two films had done so well, Flo was already the most famous star in her studio, and Kennedy was usually pretty friendly with her. But today he was being very cruel to her. "Do you think I'd call if we didn't have a problem?" Kennedy gritted his teeth and sneered. "I got a call from Williams Media. They said that you just offended the president of their company and that your tactless attitude towards the president's wife and sister has seriously affected our business relationship. They're gonna cut us off completely. What the hell have you done?" "I have no idea what I did. I didn't even know I met the president of Williams Media." Flo was absolutely gobsmacked. "You imbecile! They said you just insulted him backstage." Kennedy was about to throw his phone across the room. "Do you realize that the two films you just put out and all your commercial ventures for the next 3 years have been planned by Williams Media? As long as President Williams isn't happy, you'll be out of the entertainment industry for good." "Sir, I really didn't see Mr. Williams. I've only talked with the staff and I had a few words with some annoying guy who came here looking for a photo op with his wife and friends." Flo was about to cry. Her whole future was going down the drain and she had no idea why. "Flo Lambeau, are you really that dense? That's not just some autograph hound. The president of Williams Media is standing right in front of you. You're frickin' unbelievable." Lewis Kennedy took a deep breath and told her very slowly and clearly, "If you don't ask Mr. Williams for forgiveness right this second, don't bother coming back to my company." After her boss hung up, Flo thought she was going to faint. And when she saw the smirk on Kevin's face, she felt her heart sink. Why would the president of a major company be dressed like a slob? He didn't even have a bodyguard. How was I supposed to know? Flo thought to herself. "Let's head back to the apartment, Kevin," Nicole said again. She was trying to act like it was no big deal, but she was really disappointed. Lily pulled on Kevin's arm and said, "Let's go, honey. Don't put Rachel in an awkward position. And remember that Dalton isn't here to help you if you get in a fight." She thought that there'd just been a power failure and Kevin had actually called Dalton to help him out. When Kevin was about to leave, Flo Lambeau suddenly called out, "Mr. Williams, I was wrong." Rachel and Kevin were the only ones who weren't confused by this. "So you admit that you were wrong? Don't you want me to get down on my knees and beg you? Isn't that how you put it?" Kevin sneered as he threw her insult back at her. When Kevin said that, Flo's legs got weak and she almost fell over. I know I was wrong, really, really wrong. Please accept my apologies. I won't do anything like this again. By now, Flo's face had turned pale. But Kevin didn't say anything. He didn't even change his expression. Miss Lambeau, what are you doing? I've already called the power company and they've sent someone to deal with it, Chuck said as he trotted over to them. But Flo didn't pay any attention to him. As everyone looked on in shock, she dropped to her knees and started sobbing into Kevin's shirt. Please forgive me, she practically whispered as she thought about losing her contract with Williams Media. The onlookers were amazed and wondered if they were seeing things. What the heck was going on? What have you done to Miss Lambeau, you jerk? Chuck yelled at Kevin. Suddenly, his cell phone rang. When he looked at the screen, he saw that it was his father, Elliot Nassau. Dad, why are you calling me all of a sudden? Chuck quickly picked up the call and asked. I had to call you so the whole family wouldn't be ruined by you. Do you know what you've done? Elliot barked at him. Dad, are you talking about the power outage at the show? Don't worry, I've got it dealt with, Chuck explained with a smile. Are you kidding? I'm calling you because of Flo Lambeau, Elliot said angrily. Do you know that you've just insulted the president of Williams Media? What? No, I didn't, Dad. Chuck was stunned. Yes, you did. The president's secretary at Williams Media just called me in person. I don't want to hear any excuses. If the president doesn't forgive you today, you son of a bitch, you're out of the business. We do 60% of our contracts with Williams. Do you have any idea how angry I am right now? Elliot ended the call before his son had a chance to reply. Chuck wasn't a fool. He'd figured out his father was talking about Kevin. He just wished he'd realized it sooner, like when Rachel was standing up for Kevin earlier. But Chuck knew exactly what he had to do. He took a deep breath and groveled, just like Flo had done. I'm sorry that I offended you, Mr. Williams. Can you forgive me? Everyone stood there in silence. They were starting to realize just how powerful Kevin really was. And he obviously wasn't the useless loser that they'd heard rumors about. I'll have to think about it, Kevin answered him coolly. I had no idea who you were. Please forgive my ignorance, Chuck pleaded with him. This day had turned into a disaster. I'll have a chat with your family, Kevin responded as he turned and looked at Flo. Miss Lambeau, what do you have to say for yourself? Sir, as long as you're willing to forgive me, I'll do anything you ask me to do, she begged him very sincerely. It's good to hear that, Kevin replied casually, but he wasn't quite done teaching her a lesson.
Flo Lambeau and Chuck Nassau had just begged Kevin to forgive their rudeness after finding out he was the CEO of Williams Media. Flo's career as a star was just taking off and she couldn't let it all come crashing down. What's the use of apologizing to me? It's not like I'm the one who wanted to take pictures with you anyway. Kevin only wanted to teach Flo Lambeau a lesson. He didn't want to completely destroy her. After all, the company had already invested a lot in her career. Flo Lambeau instantly understood what Kevin meant. She quickly ran over to Nicole and took her by the hand. I'm so sorry. I was being really impulsive earlier and kind of lost control. I apologize, and I hope that you can somehow forgive me. Seeing Flo's change of heart, Nicole felt a whole lot better. But for a moment she didn't know what to say and hesitated a little, which Flo misunderstood as a rejection. I'll tell you what. You can be like my adopted sister. In the future, if you need anything at all, just send me a message and I'll do my best to help you out. Flo took out her phone and quickly exchanged numbers with Nicole. She also posed for a few photos with Lily. This made the fans who were crowded around them very jealous. Being able to get close to their idol was something they'd only dreamed of. After doing all these things to make up for her behavior, Flo stepped away from Nicole, who still hadn't recovered from the excitement, and returned to Kevin. In her most pleasant tone, she asked him, Kevin, Mr. Williams, are you satisfied? I'm not satisfied, Kevin shook his head and replied. Then what do you think we should do? Flo lowered her head and asked him. She decided that if she made Kevin forgive her, she'd even be willing to spend the night with him. But Kevin didn't have anything like that in mind. A mocking expression appeared on his face. "Didn't you just say that you came to Chicago to meet with your fans? Well, I don't want to keep you from doing that. From now on, if anyone enters this mall, you need to take a photo with them. I'll ask someone to keep an eye on you from the control room. If you miss even one of them, you'll have to bear the consequences." Then Kevin turned to look at Chuck Nassau. He walked up to him and patted his shoulder. "Sometimes you end up backing the wrong team. Be more careful next time." Without waiting for Chuck to answer, Kevin quickly turned around and left the shopping mall with Lily, Rachel, and Nicole. The fans still hadn't gotten over their shock. Flo's eyes were welling up with tears. There were so many people in the shopping mall. How many photos would she have to take? But since Kevin had already given the order, she didn't have any choice, did she? Even her boss, Mr. Kennedy, couldn't argue with the CEO of Williams Media. All of this was the result of her foolish behavior. After walking out of the mall, Rachel said goodbye to the three of them. Kevin urged them to get going while things were still calm. After all, Flo had a huge fan base. If something went wrong, someone would have to clean up the mess. Nicole finally came back to her senses and gave Kevin an uneasy look. "You've definitely changed. Even someone as famous as Flo Lambeau has to suck up to you?" "Well, I had to make something of myself, didn't I?" Kevin proudly turned his head and looked at Lily while he replied. "I didn't expect Dalton to be so tough. He must have a lot of friends at Williams Media." Lily didn't think that Flo Lambeau's apology was all because of Kevin. Dalton may not have a lot going for him, but he has one heck of a reputation in Chicago. Kevin saw a way to delay telling Lily his secret identity. "Thank you so much, Kevin." Nicole kissed him on the forehead. "Nicole, what are you doing?" Lily asked in surprise. "What's wrong, sis? Are you jealous because I just kissed your husband?" Nicole said with a faint smile. "I'm not jealous. It's just that there are so many people around." Lily's face was as red as an apple. "Okay, you guys, let's change the subject. Anyway, it's still early. Do you want to go for a walk?" Kevin was feeling really good about himself. Lily and Nicole readily agreed. The three of them spent the rest of the afternoon shopping. The mall had a lot of good restaurants, so they also got a bite to eat. Kevin's job was to follow them around carrying all of the shopping bags. Then they went to a movie. It was a very long day, and when they got back to the condo, Dorothy had already gone to bed. Kevin threw all the bags on the sofa and plopped down in exhaustion. "I'm really tired after walking around for the whole afternoon. Lily, let's go take a nice hot shower." Nicole teased. "Kevin, do you want to join us?" "Really?" Kevin suddenly became a little more energetic. But the next second, he clearly felt Lily's eyes burning a hole right through him. She snapped, "What do you think the answer to that is, honey?" "I think we'd better forget about that idea. You two go ahead and clean up. I'm pretty tired right now." Kevin pretended that it didn't bother him and buried his face in the sofa. A few minutes later, Kevin heard the sound of the two women joking and splashing around in the bathroom. He couldn't help turning his head to look at them. The bathroom door was made of frosted glass. Although he couldn't see any details, he could still see enough to make his imagination run wild. He could make out the outlines of both of their figures and started to feel a little short of breath. Nicole playfully reached out her hand to rub Lily's breast with the sponge, which made her squeal in surprise. When Kevin heard her, he was tempted to rush in. "Nicole, just what are you doing?" Lily blushed shyly. "Lily, you've been married to Kevin for more than 3 years, right? What's going on between you?" Nicole gave her a lewd smile. Kevin and I haven't done anything yet." You could see the pain in Lily's eyes. Things had been going a lot better lately in their marriage, but Lily's heart was filled with sadness when she thought about how many times she'd given Kevin the cold shoulder. "What? You've been married for 3 years and haven't consummated your marriage yet? Then how did you spend your wedding night?" Nicole asked in surprise. "Our relatives and some other guests got him drunk," Lily answered quietly. But there was more to the story that she didn't tell her cousin. When they got married, Lily didn't have any feelings towards Kevin. You could even say she hated him, so on the wedding night, when he was dead drunk, she dragged him into the bathroom and he spent the whole night sleeping in the tub. Well, at least you're keeping in shape. What's your secret? Nicole looked at Lily's figure and asked, "Can you give me any tips?" What are you talking about? Lily didn't know why she would ask her a question like that. As Nicole was about to explain, the bar of soap fell out of her hand and she yelled, "Oops! Help!" 3 seconds later, Kevin pushed open the bathroom door. "What's wrong?" They all stared at each other for a moment and then things got really awkward. Lily instinctively cried out in shock. Kevin was petrified and didn't know what to do. You can imagine his surprise as he saw the two of them standing there naked in the shower. His heart skipped a beat and he stammered, I thought I heard." "What are you looking at? Hurry up and get out." As Lily said this, she grabbed a towel and covered herself in a panic. Nicole burst out laughing. "Well, I guess we're even now." How could Kevin still think about bickering with Nicole? He hurriedly closed the bathroom door and headed back to sit down on the living room sofa. While he was recovering from the excitement, his phone suddenly rang. It was Professor Murdoch. "I wonder how she reacted to the pills," Kevin wondered as he picked up the phone. "Hello, Professor Murdoch. Have you had a chance to rest?" Kevin asked her casually. "Not yet, but I'm calling about something else." She took a sip of her coffee and explained. "There will be a very important meeting next Monday." "What do you mean by important?" Kevin inquired curiously. "This afternoon, the Myriads abducted the leaders of the top 10 organizations. Roger Knott was behind it all. They're planning on shaking things up among the younger members and putting the most evil groups in their place." Professor Murdoch gave the details as she understood them. Kevin frowned slightly when he heard this. "What does this have to do with me?" "What do you think? The School for the Healing Arts is going to have a contest. Whoever wins is going to have to kill Roger Knott. Your development has already reached an extraordinary level. I'm very optimistic that you'll win the contest and handle the problem," Professor Murdoch said with certainty. Doesn't the school have any regard for human life? Kevin was unwilling to be involved in this plan. "Our mission is to destroy evil and promote what is good. Roger Knott is the ranking member of the Myriads. I don't know how many disasters he's caused. If I can get rid of him, the entire world will benefit. When the time comes, you must perform your duty well." Professor Murdoch finished her inspirational speech and hung up the phone. Kevin sat there on the sofa with a big frown on his face. He was actually a member of the Myriads, and the deputy sect leader considered him a brother. Not to mention, he was Mackenzie's grandfather. Kevin had to find a way to save Roger Knott's life. The problem was that there were a lot of experts in the school, and the ones who had offices in the library were especially lethal. Even if Kevin wanted to attack them, he was willing but not able. "It seems like I really have to enter the contest." Kevin made up his mind to do what he thought was right. Moments later, Lily and Nicole stepped out of the bathroom drying their hair. "How you doing, Kevin? Did you like what you saw?" Nicole teased. She didn't seem to mind that Kevin had just seen her in the buff. "What do you think I saw?" Kevin replied awkwardly. "Stop it, you two. Let's just drop the subject." Lily stopped Kevin from saying anything else. She was still feeling kind of embarrassed. "You two go ahead and hang out. I'm going to the study." Kevin got up from the sofa to head upstairs. "Hey, I didn't know you were so shy," Nicole loudly teased. "Make sure you study hard," and she emphasized the word, hard. Kevin almost slipped and rolled down the stairs, but he couldn't argue with her. Heaven knew how much Nicole would tease him about it later. The room suddenly became quiet. Lily had apparently recovered from the awkward scene in the shower and stood there silently drying her hair. Nicole broke the silence. "Lily, what happened to you? Did my joke make you feel uncomfortable?" "It's not because of you, Nicole. I was just thinking about how things are going between Kevin and me," Lily replied in a low voice. Nicole wasn't a dope and quickly understood what was on Lily's mind. "Aunt Dorothy still hasn't accepted Kevin, has she?" Nicole asked her very directly. "Kevin's got more ambition than he did before, and he knows a lot of famous and influential people. But for some reason, whenever he's with Mom, he acts like a loser. Lily explained with a worried look on her face. And you know what kind of person my mom is. I really don't know how to make them get along with each other. She looked Nicole in the eye and said very seriously, one is my mother, and the other is my husband. I can't lose either of them. Nicole got serious and rolled her eyes. It's simple. You and Kevin should have a baby. If Aunt Dorothy becomes a grandmother, she definitely won't dislike Kevin anymore. But how can it be so easy to have a child? I haven't even slept in the same bed as Kevin for more than a month. Lily knew that Nicole wasn't joking around like she usually did. Just take it one step at a time. The night is still young. Why don't we go out? As expected, Nicole was feeling a little restless. Where would we go in the middle of the night? Lily said as she put down her towel. How about a nightclub? Nicole suggested excitedly. Forget it. Lily didn't even want to think about it. She'd never liked going to places like bars and dance clubs, especially after that incident with Nolan Hill. She wasn't even thrilled about hotels. But Nicole's friends called her the nightclub queen when they were younger. After arguing back and forth, Lily finally relented and went up to the study to ask Kevin if he wanted to go with them. As they drove along in Kevin's Porsche Panamera, Kevin complained playfully. I can't keep up with you two. You just showered and now you want to head out to a nightclub? Why not? Don't you have fun anymore? Then Nicole looked around at the car's luxurious interior and exclaimed, So tell me, Kevin, are you rich now? This car is a hoot. It was a gift from Kevin's boss. He also gave him a Pagani Roadster, but that's just for the two of us, Lily explained as they whizzed through traffic. That's one hell of a cool boss. Nicole was even more surprised and joked. What company is that, Kevin? Are they hiring? Are you sure you'd want to work for us? Kevin asked casually. However, he realized that Nicole might actually be a good fit at Williams Media. If he assigned her to Miss Wilson, she might really be successful in the entertainment industry. Oh, I'm not interested in working, Nicole replied before Kevin could say anything. But I'm really interested in your boss. Is he married? Lily laughed out loud. What are you laughing about, you stinker? Don't you think I've still got a good figure? Nicole ran her hands along her hips. Don't worry, Kevin. When I'm in charge of your company, I'll make sure you get to keep your job. After all, we're family. Nicole acted like it was a done deal. Kevin controlled his laughter and answered, Fine. I'll take you to my office tomorrow and introduce you to my boss's secretary. He turned his attention back to the snarled traffic on Michigan Avenue as he wondered if this was a good idea after all. As Kevin drove Lily and Nicole to a nightclub, they were discussing the possibility of Nicole getting a job at Williams Media. That depends on whether you have what it takes. After Kevin said that, he kept out of the rest of the conversation and focused on his driving. Even this late in the evening, traffic was a nightmare downtown. About half an hour later, the three of them walked into the club. They were immediately overwhelmed by the intense music. There was a woman in the middle of the dance floor gyrating like nobody was watching. The place was a real meat market. Kevin noticed a couple sitting in a dark corner and wondered what they were up to. He pointed to an empty spot not far away from them and loudly said to Lily and Nicole, You two go over there and sit down. I'll go to the bar and get us some drinks. Go for it, Kevin. Nicole smiled and pulled Lily along as she walked towards the empty seats. When are we leaving, Nicole? This place is too noisy, and I'm not used to it. Lily's face didn't look too good. Don't worry, sis. There's a reason you're ready to leave. You're out of practice. Let's just hang out for an hour. Nicole smiled and teased. Why are you in such a hurry to go back? Are you and Kevin going to make love? Nicole, would you please stop teasing me all the time? Lily blushed again as she thought about what had just happened in the shower. Just then, a tough-looking man suddenly walked over and put his beer on the table. He leered at Lily and Nicole. Do you want to find a quiet place and get to know each other? Why don't we just skip to goodbye? If you know what's good for you, you'll hurry up and leave. Nicole had a bad temper sometimes.
Hey, babe, don't be so harsh. We don't know each other yet, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends.
The man had no intention of leaving. Instead, he grabbed a chair and sat down. I'm sorry, but that seat's taken. You'll have to sit somewhere else, Lily said very coldly.
Why don't we have a drink and get to know each other?
The man gave Lily a creepy look, and he practically had drool coming out of the corner of his mouth. His name was Smitty, and he had a reputation for hitting on anything with a pulse. He'd been having a lot of bad luck that evening and was about to go to another club when Lily and Nicole caught his eye. I don't know how to drink, so why don't you just move along? Lily's expression was getting colder and colder.
Don't treat me like that. Everybody can use a new friend.
He stuck out his tongue and reached his hand out towards Lily's cheek. Suddenly, a thick and powerful palm grabbed Smitty's wrist. Don't you understand what she's saying? It's time to move along, Kevin said coldly.
Who the hell are you?
Smitty was really pissed to be interrupted like this. You don't need to know who I am. Just leave now while you still have your health. As Kevin said this, he exerted a little more force on the guy's wrist. The expression on the man's face changed drastically, and he gave Kevin a ferocious sneer.
Hey, friend. First come, first serve. I saw her first, and you're cutting the line.
He pulled his arm hard, trying to break free from Kevin's hold. But he was surprised to find that no matter how hard he tried, it didn't work. Kevin's hand was gripping him like a vice. Well, I'm her husband. Why would I need to cut in line? Kevin sneered as he suddenly let go of the man's wrist. When he opened his hand, Smitty fell to the floor because Kevin sometimes forgot his own strength. This kind of confrontation wasn't unusual for the nightclub. Since the two of them hadn't started a fight yet, they didn't attract much attention. When the onlookers saw that there wasn't much going on, they turned right around and went back to their dancing. Get lost, Kevin finally shouted. Smitty jumped up from the floor and pointed at Kevin.
Wait and see what I do to you, kid.
I hate people pointing at me and talking crap. Get lost or you'll lose that finger. Kevin turned around and sat down, hoping that the guy would get the message and go bother someone else. Then he gestured to the server to bring their drinks over. Smitty gave Kevin a particularly nasty look. Then he walked out of the club and pulled out his cell phone to make a call. Wow, Kevin, that was awesome. That guy even let you be a knight in shining armor saving a damsel in distress. Nicole took a sip of her drink. He's just some petty local hoodlum. What's so amazing about it? Kevin wasn't about to brag about what he'd done. He was a lot stronger than Smitty. Hubby, I think we should just head home. That guy didn't look like someone to be trifled with, Lily said worriedly. Don't worry, honey. If anything happens, I'll give Dalton a call. There's no tough guy bigger than him in all of Chicago. Kevin was trying to ease Lily's mind, but he wasn't joking. That was a fact. Kevin, I know you have a good relationship with Dalton because you saved his wife's life, but you can't keep calling him up for everything. Not only did Lily feel even worse now, but she was also worried about hurting Kevin's friendship. Stop it, guys. We're here to have fun, not get a lecture. Nicole admired her cousin, but she was being a real drag. Sure enough, Lily dropped the subject and just quietly sipped her drink. About 10 minutes later, there was a big commotion at the door, and they saw a dozen tall, sturdy men with knives in their hands and vicious looks in their eyes. Everyone in the nightclub stopped what they were doing. They didn't know where these people came from or what they wanted to do. Kevin, who had sharp eyes, could see the guy who'd just been giving them trouble. The manager of the club walked up to the men with a disarming smile.
Is anything wrong, Smitty? You look unhappy about something. Get the hell away from me. I'm looking for someone. Everyone, just go back to what you were doing. Don't get involved if it's none of your damn business.
He sounded even more proud and arrogant now than he'd been in front of Kevin just a few minutes before. Then he spotted Kevin still sitting in the same spot with Lily and Nicole. He swaggered over with a dozen bullies.
Kid, I'll give you one more chance. You're going to get down on your knees and apologize to me. Then I'll show these two women a really good time tonight. If you do that, we'll call it good." He sneered at Kevin, then he took a knife from the man next to him and drove it hard into the table in front of them. "If you don't do what I say, I'll cut off your finger and toss it into that fish tank over there." Lily's face went pale in an instant and she hugged Kevin's arm tightly. Nicole, on the other hand, didn't panic at all. "Who are you trying to scare anyway? Don't you even know this man's name?" The group of thugs was stunned for a second. They really didn't know who Kevin was and started to have some doubts. Could he be the toughest man in Chicago? Or maybe he belongs to a powerful family. Smitty and the others thought to themselves. After all, Chicago was a huge city. You could spend your whole life without crossing paths with someone more powerful than you. Smitty came back to his senses and opened up his fist. He pointed at himself and said arrogantly, "Well, do you know who I am?" "I really don't know." Kevin smiled and shook his head. "And I really don't care either." There was no sign of fear on his face. "My name is Smitty. Have you ever heard of Dalton Steele? He's my brother-in-law," Smitty said confidently. "So now, smartass, you're going to apologize to me. If you don't, my buddies here will pound the crap out of you." Kevin got a funny look on his face when he heard Smitty say this. Who would have guessed? This jerk actually turned out to be Dalton's brother-in-law. "My name's Kevin Williams. It doesn't matter if you haven't heard of me, but you better call Dalton before you make another move." Kevin leaned back in his chair and put his feet up on the table. This was going to get interesting. Smitty returned to the nightclub with a group of thugs. As it turns out, he was Dalton Steele's brother-in-law, and now he wanted to take revenge on Kevin for embarrassing him in front of everyone earlier. However, Smitty was unaware of Kevin's own association with Dalton. Kevin then introduced himself and told them to call Dalton before making another move. "Who? Cut the crap. I've never heard of him." Smitty sneered and turned his head to ask his men, "Have any of you guys heard of Kevin Williams?" "What kind of stupid name is that? It's so generic and unpleasant to hear. I don't care who he is, I only acknowledge you as my boss," one of Smitty's men mocked. "He's right, boss. Just give me the word and I'll deal with this lowlife. I'll surely beat some sense into this guy to make sure he knows who he's messing with," another one chimed in. "Boss, why don't you go grab a drink and rest for a while? See if I can teach this loser a good lesson for you." It seemed that all of Smitty's thugs wanted a piece of Kevin as more than 20 men laughed and jeered at him. They vastly outnumbered him, so they didn't think he stood a chance. The onlookers who were watching this commotion shook their heads one after another. Some of them even let out a sigh. It would suck to be that man right now. He actually provoked Smitty? What was he thinking? One of the onlookers said as he nudged his friend. His friend agreed. "I know, right? Smitty's a relative of the Steele family. I think he'll definitely end up in the hospital even if he doesn't die tonight." "It's a pity those two beautiful women have such bad taste to be associated with such a useless person," the onlooker added. Hearing the comments from the crowd, the sneer on Smitty's face grew even bigger as he directed his attention back to Kevin. "Now that you know who you're dealing with, hurry up and choose your fate. I don't have any extra time to waste with you." Just as Smitty said this, Kevin did something that nobody expected. He fiercely kicked Smitty in the chest, sending him flying across the dance floor, knocking two of his strongmen down along with him. "How dare you insult me like that? Even if Dalton came here personally, he wouldn't talk to me like that. Who the hell do you think you are?" Kevin spat on the ground with disdain. The whole club suddenly became silent. Even the music was turned off by now. The manager was so scared that his eyes seemed like they were about to fall out. He quickly walked to the back of the bar and sat down to make a call. The rest of the onlookers, including the rest of Smitty's men, still couldn't believe what they had just witnessed, and they hadn't recovered from their shock just yet. I didn't see it wrong, did I? This man kicked Smitty right in the chest?" one of the onlookers asked. Someone else from the crowd suddenly recalled, "I remember now. He seems to be that good-for-nothing son-in-law who lucked into marrying someone from the Jones family. No wonder he looks familiar.
Is that true? And he chose to go up against Smitty? Will he find a way out of this mess? The onlooker wondered. Another person replied,
Members of the Steele family are people you shouldn't dare to mess with. Even if this man belongs to the Jones family, he won't be able to get out of this easily.
Nicole looked at Kevin worriedly. Since so many people were saying that the Steele family was powerful, it was obvious that they weren't people that ordinary folks could provoke. However, Lily wasn't worried much at all. In any case, Kevin had a good relationship with Dalton. Perhaps she could still convince Kevin to treat Smitty to a meal to smooth things over and avoid causing any trouble. Although Kevin might lose some face because of this, at least it was much better than being beaten up.
You useless piece of trash. You actually dared to hit me?
Smitty was infuriated. He understood that Kevin had no plan to back down, so he no longer wanted to play games with him either.
What are you all still standing there for? Hurry up and attack!
Smitty raised his arm and called out his men. While he shouted at his men, he coughed a few times. It seemed that Kevin's kick was quite powerful because it had knocked the wind out of him. After receiving the order, the 20 or so strongmen all raised their knives at Kevin. Their weapons reflected the dance club's shiny lights onto the surrounding crowd. Seeing this, Lily and Nicole both cried out in horror as they feared for Kevin's life. Meanwhile, the other people in the nightclub either turned their heads away or covered their mouths with their hands. Not wanting to associate themselves with Kevin and the two women, they were afraid of making any noise that would get them into trouble. Everyone's hearts raced as they watched all 20 knife-wielding men running towards Kevin at the same time. Just then, Kevin also rushed towards them to attack, and the entire nightclub was filled with screams of panic as the onlookers prayed for their own survival. With so many men fighting, no one in the crowd could figure out what was going on. However, a few minutes later, all the chaos died down as Kevin stood alone in the middle of the dance floor, twisting his wrist. On the other hand, Smitty's men were all lying on the ground, clutching their arms and letting out miserable cries. Everyone's jaws dropped at the unexpected outcome. Their legs were trembling and their faces were filled with disbelief. They looked at Kevin as if they had just seen a terrifying ghost. "I told you to get lost, but you chose to come back and provoke me. You left me with no choice but to do this to your men," Kevin coldly remarked as he slowly walked towards Smitty. "Do you know why you can still stand?"
I don't know,
Smitty answered almost subconsciously, fearing for his life. "That's because of your brother-in-law, Dalton." Kevin took out his phone and called Dalton. Dalton immediately picked up and was the first to speak.
Kevin, there's no need to explain anything. I already know what happened. I'm on my way.
"Hurry up. Your brother-in-law has caused quite a lot of trouble here," Kevin replied.
Wait for me. I'll be there soon.
After that, Dalton didn't say anything else and ended the call. Kevin then turned around and went back to Lily. He gently patted the back of her head and asked, "Were you scared?" It was only at this time that Lily finally returned to her senses. While she knew Kevin could fight, she never thought that he would be so powerful. "Kevin, did you really defeat all of these men?" Nicole was still in a state of disbelief. "Who else could have done it if it wasn't me?" Kevin didn't know how else to answer her. "Oh my God, Kevin! I can't believe you're so powerful now." Nicole's eyes grew wide with uncontrollable excitement. Just a moment ago, she had been as worried for Kevin as Lily. "What will happen to you and the others? Will you be arrested?" Lily asked worriedly. Kevin had already gone to prison before after a similar scuffle at the Salix Leaf Hotel. That wouldn't be the case tonight, would it? Kevin knew what Lily was worried about and reassured her. "Don't worry, Lily. They just dislocated their arms. Of course, I only showed them mercy because of Dalton. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been as lucky." By now, the surrounding crowd had slowly come back to their senses as well. One of them commented,
Didn't they say he was just a good-for-nothing son-in-law? Maybe they were talking about some other guy. Besides, how can he be so good at fighting?
I can't believe he defeated more than 20 knife-wielding men using his bare hands. I thought I'd only see something like that in the movies," another onlooker added. "He only crippled their arms because of Smitty's connection with Dalton. If it had been anyone else." When someone mentioned this, the rest of the crowd couldn't help but shudder at the thought. Meanwhile, Smitty's men grimaced in pain as they nursed their injuries. Their faces were pale, and their foreheads were covered in cold sweat. As soon as some of them managed to get back up, there was only one thought in their minds right now: run! Seconds later, a couple of Smitty's men quickly bolted through the nightclub's exit, leaving their boss and fellow thugs behind. Despite this, Smitty remained confident. As long as Dalton was willing to help him, he would definitely have his revenge on Kevin. Little did he know that Kevin had actually called Dalton earlier, and his brother-in-law was already on the way. When Kevin had mentioned that he personally knew Dalton and warned him against provoking him earlier, Smitty assumed that he was only bragging. How powerful was this guy? Even if Kevin was quite skilled and strong with his punches and kicks, he was still just a good-for-nothing son-in-law who lived off his wife. So while Smitty was crawling his way to the nightclub's exit to escape, he was surprised to bump into Dalton, who had just arrived. "Dalton, help me! There's a stupid piece of trash over there who wants to kill me, and he even said that he's friends with you," Smitty uttered in relief, as if his life-saving prayer had just been answered. Smitty's words attracted the attention of many people in the nightclub. "Dalton's here? I wonder what he'll do now." "Is there a need to ask? Dalton is Smitty's brother-in-law. It's over for that good-for-nothing loser if he chooses to fight again," an onlooker remarked. "Dalton, you have to avenge me. He's the one who started all this trouble tonight," Smitty begged. "Shut up and stand behind me." Dalton's face was extremely serious, and Smitty had no choice but to do as he said. Dalton had known Kevin for quite some time now and had seen him humiliate a lot of people. However, Dalton had never actually seen Kevin fight, so he was a bit surprised when he first heard about the nightclub brawl. How much did he really know about Kevin? "Dalton, you got here pretty fast," Kevin boastfully called out to him. "I just taught your brother-in-law a lesson. Don't tell me you're mad." When they heard Kevin say this, all of the onlookers at the nightclub were petrified. Everyone in Chicago knew who Dalton was. So how could a lowlife like Kevin speak to him like this? Did he have a death wish or something?
"Kevin, if you wanted to have a night out and go for a drink, why didn't you just come and find me? I know a lot of better places than this."
Dalton walked up to Kevin enthusiastically and put his arm around his shoulder.
"You didn't have to beat up my brother-in-law so badly."
"In my defense, he went after my wife and her cousin, so I had to put him in his place. Besides, out of respect for you, I only kicked him once. At least he's not lying on the ground like his other men," Kevin said with a laugh.
"Fair enough. My brother-in-law can be quite a headache sometimes. I'll have to explain this to my wife when I get home."
Then Dalton turned around to Smitty and shouted,
"Don't you know who you just pissed off? What the hell are you just standing there for? Apologize to Mr. Williams immediately."
Smitty's jaw dropped. With no choice but to accept defeat, he dejectedly made his way towards Kevin and apologized.
"Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry for giving you any trouble tonight. Please forgive me."
Kevin picked up the wine bottle that he'd ordered earlier and poured a glass in front of Smitty. "I accept your apology. Now that we're good, have some of this wine. I hope you've learned your lesson and will keep a low profile when you go out in the future." Displeased with Smitty's behavior, Dalton scolded him.
"Why are you still standing there drinking? Leave the nightclub as soon as you finish that glass of wine."
He then ordered his bodyguard to take away the men who were lying on the floor. Once Smitty and his men were out of the nightclub, Dalton turned his attention back to Kevin.
"Even our teacher at the Healing Arts School is no match compared to someone like you, Kevin. It's better to keep you safe and sound than anything else."
The surrounding crowd seemed to have been confused by Dalton's words. What was he talking about? Is this man even human? After a while, Kevin felt that they couldn't stay at the nightclub much longer, so he gave his car keys to Lily and let her and Nicole head back first. He was going to walk with Dalton for a while. "Promise me you'll come home early," Lily reminded Kevin quietly.
Don't worry, Lily. I won't let Kevin get in any trouble, Dalton answered with a smile.
Not long after Lily and Nicole left, Kevin felt a wave of pressure coming towards him and Dalton. His expression changed drastically. "Dalton, run!" He pulled Dalton by his arm and called for everyone at the nightclub to escape. "Everyone, get out immediately. Don't follow the two of us." What are those two running away from? The onlookers were confused. Suddenly, Kevin saw a dagger swiftly approaching them from a distance. "Dalton, be careful!" After pushing Dalton away, he quickly gathered all of his strength and stretched out both hands in an attempt to deflect the weapon. But the dagger's momentum was too strong, and Kevin was sent flying from the impact. He hit a tree hard, making him spit out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the deflected dagger was perfectly caught by none other than Ariana Titus.
"Damn it. You really won't stop going after us, will you?"
Dalton's face instantly turned sour when he saw who was attacking them. "I can't believe you're still alive after what I did to you." Ariana sneered as she looked at Dalton in surprise.
"Of course. I'm tougher than you think,"
Dalton remarked and then rushed towards Kevin.
"Are you all right?"
"I'm fine." Kevin reassured Dalton and got back up on his feet. As he took out the night dagger from his jacket, he briefly wondered how Ariana had suddenly resurfaced to attack them tonight. Since they were able to track their whereabouts, it meant that there must be people from the Union in the city. "You two are doomed. Both of you will die tonight," Ariana threatened.
"You really talk about a big game, don't you? I remember back in New York City you also said the same thing at the hospital, but you didn't succeed."
Dalton was unimpressed.
"Now that you're in my territory here in Chicago, what makes tonight any different?"
"Dalton, just bear with it. She definitely won't stand a chance against the two of us." Kevin remained relatively calm at the moment. "Kevin, you scum! Tonight I'll end both of your lives as payback for Randall Williams. 2 souls in exchange for his." As soon as these words left Ariana's mouth, she took a step forward and started to thrust her dagger at Kevin.
"Good luck with that. Maybe it's you who should join him up there."
Dalton didn't have any fear as he raised both fists, ready to fight Ariana. The two of them collided with each other. Unfortunately, Ariana was too strong for Dalton, and his legs sank deep into the ground from the impact. "You all right there, Dalton?" Kevin wanted to come over and help him, but he was still recovering from the effects of crashing into the tree.
"I'm fine,"
Dalton moaned, but Kevin could see some blood flowing down from the corner of his mouth as he gritted his teeth. "You bastard! It's time for you to die!" Ariana shouted as she once again diverted her attack towards Kevin. Seeing this, Dalton wanted to stop Ariana, but he couldn't manage to pull his legs out of the ground. Fortunately, Kevin instinctively blocked her dagger attack, sending it flying into the air as it bounced off of his arm, thanks to the protective clothing the Alliance leader had given him. It saved his life again. Damn it! Because her attack had failed, Ariana decided to change her strategy. She withdrew her dagger and used all of her might to strike Kevin's chest with her left palm. This time, Kevin was unable to block her, and he went flying into another tree, but his protective clothing managed to protect him from much worse injuries. "I didn't expect you to be wearing such powerful protection under your clothes. When I'm finished with you, I'll take it from you as my bounty." Ariana sneered as she rushed towards Kevin in a flash. He could see the greed that was faintly visible in her eyes. Kevin wanted to reply, but when he opened his mouth, all he could do was spit out some blood as he tried to recover. "When you see your grandfather in the afterlife, remember to get down on your knees and apologize to him for being such a useless grandson." Ariana taunted as she prepared to deliver a final blow to Kevin's head.
"Don't hurt him."
Dalton finally found enough strength to pull his legs out and rush to save Kevin. "You're courting death by overestimating yourself. Neither of you are powerful enough to go up against me," Ariana warned as she struck back. She hit Dalton in the chest, rendering him unconscious in an instant as he fell to the ground. "Dalton!" Kevin shouted anxiously. It seemed like it was impossible for them to fight back, even with his night dagger and his body armor. "Any last words?" Ariana snarled as she clenched her fist. Just then, a strong wind blew, forcing Ariana to divert her attention and defend herself as she held her dagger in front of her. Suddenly, another dagger swiftly struck hers. With her dagger's blade now bent, She was forced to throw it away. However, even before she could draw another dagger from her vest, she received a powerful blow to the stomach, sending her a few steps back. She spat out some blood as her entire body trembled. "Who dares to interfere?" Ariana quickly wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Her gaze vigilantly swept around her surroundings a few times, but she still couldn't see her mysterious opponent. "Why are you still hiding? Show yourself!" "How can the Union claim to hate evil when you're just adding to it?" A figure slowly walked over from a dark corner. "It's you again!" Ariana immediately recognized who it was. She then drew another dagger and pointed it at the Night King. "You've injured my student twice. It seems like I have to teach you a lesson." The Night King drew his own dagger, the same one that had struck Ariana earlier. Seeing this, Ariana wasn't going to back down and was prepared for a showdown. She brought out the shield that was strapped behind her back. Forged in titanium alloy, she was confident that it would protect her from the Night King's strikes. However, her shield was shattered into pieces like broken glass with just one strike, and the impact sent her a couple of feet back. With blood coming out from her mouth and nose, Ariana's eyes were filled with disbelief. What kind of dagger was the Night King using? It looked much more powerful and terrifying than hers. "This is only a small punishment. If you ever dare to harm Kevin again, you'll suffer the same fate as your shield." The Night King warned Ariana without even looking at her as she ran away. "Thank God you came. I feel bad, though, that you've already had to save me twice despite your training," Kevin called out with difficulty. "It's all right. It doesn't hurt to lose now and then. I still have a lot to teach you," the Night King stoically replied. "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." No matter how thick-skinned Kevin was, it was impossible for him to hide his emotions after the Night King had saved his life twice. "That woman is too ruthless. She really wants you dead. Fortunately, I got here in time," the Night King commented as he took a multicolored pill from his pocket. "This is a crystal pill. Take it and you'll wake up recovered. I'll go and check on your friend." After the Night King threw the pill to Kevin, he stood up and walked towards Dalton. When the Night King first got there, he watched them secretly for a long time. He wanted to see how far Kevin could go against Ariana during their second encounter. So he'd witnessed Dalton risking his life to save Kevin, and this impressed him. More than an hour later, Kevin woke up from a deep sleep. When he checked his surroundings, the Night King had already disappeared. Only Dalton, who was recuperating not far away, and the traces of their fight on the ground proved that it wasn't just a dream. "I didn't expect the Night King to give me the crystal pill," Kevin exclaimed as he examined how his body felt. According to the herbal medicine books he got from the Alliance, the crystal pill was made from high-grade natural ingredients that only a selected few in the organization knew how to produce. And true enough, his injuries had not only fully healed, but he also felt much stronger than before because of it. While he was thinking about this, Dalton suddenly woke up.
"Kevin, are you all right?"
"I'm fine, Dalton. Why don't we head home? We can't stay here for long," Kevin cautioned with lingering fear that Ariana would come back for them when the Night King is out of sight. Dalton was curious.
"The old man from earlier."
"That's my mentor. I can't say much, but you must keep his existence a secret," Kevin interrupted Dalton. But he didn't tell him anything else about his connection with the Night King. After all, the fewer people who knew about him, the better.
"I understand, Kevin. Let's head back now."
Seeing that Dalton had already fully recovered, Kevin knew right away what the Night King had given him. The next day, when Kevin took Lily to the Healing Arts School, he was surprised to find that there were various arenas set up on the school's martial arts field. "Honey, I've got class now. Let's meet this afternoon." Lily smiled and kissed Kevin before leaving. "Okay," Kevin agreed as they parted ways. However, as soon as Kevin stepped into the classroom, he saw Mackenzie, who was sitting next to Penny. He then remembered that he still had to think of a way to save her grandfather, Roger Knott. Very quickly, news of a martial arts competition to eliminate the myriads quickly spread throughout the entire school. Professor Murdoch entered each classroom and explained the rules of the contest. They were very simple. Students would fight each other one-on-one. They couldn't use hidden weapons, nor could they injure or kill their opponents. The winners of each round would move forward to face one another in the same manner, and the final victor would have an opportunity to kill Roger Knott. Thus, the entire student body marched onto the field in an orderly manner, and high-ranking leaders from the top 10 organizations were already sitting on a platform. I wonder if they'll also participate in today's competition, Kevin asked nervously. His chances of winning would be almost zero against these martial arts experts. Don't worry, they're just here to observe, and their main purpose is to select potential leaders from the current student body, Professor Murdoch explained. However, you'll still have to prove yourself against representatives from the other organizations. Professor Murdoch, are you sure I can handle them? This is a lot of pressure. Kevin was nervous. Professor Murdoch shook her head and gave Kevin a stern look. You better make this school proud. If you don't get first place, I'll... Don't worry. I was just kidding. Of course I'll give my best. Kevin interrupted before going to his seat beside Dalton. Upon doing so, he noticed that Mackenzie was sitting in front of him. You're not a student here, are you? Kevin asked her. I brought Mackenzie. Penny turned her head and explained. At the same time, she gave Kevin a complicated look. You're participating in the competition later, right? How did you know? Kevin was surprised. Each class has a nominated roster of participants determined by our professors. Didn't you read our chat group thread last night? Professor Murdoch told everyone that she was counting on you to win, Penny patiently explained. Kevin and Dalton subconsciously looked at each other when they heard her. Last night, the two of them almost died at Ariana's hands. How could they have had the time and energy to check their phones? Suddenly, Kevin's phone vibrated. Kevin, can you help Mackenzie save her grandpa? In order to not attract attention, Penny had secretly sent him a text. Penny, you think too highly of me. The competition looks fierce out there, Kevin admitted. He really wanted to help, but the problem was that he had to get first place and defeat everyone in his path. Kevin, I believe in you. You're the only one who can help her. Also, I didn't mean to offend you before. Right now, I'm begging you, okay? Please save Mackenzie's grandpa. After Penny sent this message, she let out a long sigh. Seeing this, Kevin turned off his phone screen. He then closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He really wanted to tell Penny, I can't promise anything. Even I don't believe in myself. All this time, Mackenzie didn't notice their silent conversation because she was looking far into the distance. Her mind seemed to be preoccupied with something else at the moment. Mackenzie seemed to be bothered by some thoughts as well. Featuring students from different classes and other organizations, Kevin was faced with fierce competition and was unsure if he could win in order to save Roger Knott. When his granddaughter, Mackenzie, returned from Penny's place a few days ago, she discovered that her entire mansion was a mess, and the guards were severely injured. Her grandfather had gone missing, and when she asked those who were lucky enough to survive, she found out that high-ranking members from the top 10 organizations had worked together to capture him. Since then, Mackenzie had spent a great deal of time and effort to look for him, sending members of the myriads and using any connection she had for reinforcements. But up until now, she still had no leads regarding his whereabouts. So when Mackenzie heard about the martial arts competition at the Healing Arts School today and how the final victor would be given the opportunity to kill her grandfather, she followed Penny over to take a look. Given this, Mackenzie had already made up her mind that even if there was a sliver of a chance today, money wouldn't be an issue if it meant saving her grandfather's life. Don't worry, I'll do my best to help you. Even if he had his own doubts about winning the competition, Kevin tried his best to reassure Mackenzie as he spoke to her. Who asked you to help? Are you sure you can win? Mackenzie snapped as her patience was wearing thin. She was so anxious about her grandfather's condition that she had momentarily forgotten how Kevin and the deputy leader of the Myriads were like brothers. Sorry about that, Kevin. Mackenzie's just very worried, so please excuse her manners. Penny tried to smooth things over with Kevin and told Mackenzie to apologize. Kevin just smiled at them to indicate that he didn't take it to heart. The large martial arts arena could accommodate almost 100,000 people, and now all the seats were currently filled. As his gaze swept across the entire venue, he saw some familiar faces, such as Kelly Emmett, who was a member of the Union, sitting next to Renee Silver and Ariana Titus. Kevin noticed that Ariana looked a little tired and disheveled. It seemed that she hadn't recovered from her injuries after encountering the Night King the previous night. Apart from them, there was also Frank Carter, the martial arts instructor who had since transferred to the Central Alternative Healing Academy, Nadia Alexander, the local president of the Herbalist Society's Southern Branch, and Harley Shepard, the vice president of their own school for the healing arts. I can't believe there are so many familiar faces who are part of the top 10 organizations, Kevin thought to himself. Suddenly, a deep voice announced,
"Everyone, please be quiet."
The person who spoke was a man who was standing on the highest platform. It was none other than Wayne Ford, who looked to be in his early 30s. However, the fact that he was able to sit there clearly indicated his high position. It seemed that he wasn't only the enforcer at the Southwest School of Healing. On top of that, he was also the dean of the Healing Arts School. So when Wayne spoke, the noise from the crowd was instantly drowned out by his authoritative voice. This proved how powerful he was.
"Today is an important day for the Healing Arts School. The Myriads and the Alliance are two evil underground organizations that have been causing great harm to the world. They must both be eradicated for the greater good. Thanks to a concerted effort from the top 10 organizations, we have managed to capture Roger Knott from the Myriads. This man has committed countless crimes and has killed countless people. Do you think we should punish him?" Wayne asked. "We should!" Thousands and thousands of people agreed in unison. What kind of bullshit narrative is he selling? And the fact that they're all agreeing with him, they must be out of their minds. Mackenzie clenched her fist tightly. Penny immediately reached out to comfort Mackenzie, trying to calm her down for the time being. "I believe that everyone already knows about today's competition, so I won't keep you all waiting for long. With that, I hope the contestants can give their all and fight for a chance to get rid of evil." Wayne returned to his chair, satisfied with his convincing speech. The host of the competition didn't have Wayne's commanding voice, so he held a microphone in his hand and announced, "Now the competition shall officially begin. Here are the matchups for the first round." When they heard that Kevin was fighting against a student from the Central Alternative Healing Academy, Clarissa Pratt, everyone burst into laughter. Clarissa was the top student from her school. Her martial arts skills were way more advanced compared to Kevin, and she always had a superior knife fighting technique. "Kevin, you should just surrender now. It's not too late to withdraw from the competition." Lionel was the first to stand up and make fun of him. "I really don't know what Professor Murdoch was thinking. She actually let you participate in the competition. Isn't this deliberately making our class lose face in front of everyone?" Mike expressed his resentment. He was secretly bitter for not being chosen to compete and couldn't accept that Kevin was the one selected over him. "Kevin, I know you're good at martial arts. Even Carter can't beat you. However, you should know your own limitations. Do you think you'll actually stand a chance against Clarissa?" Luther sneered. "What the hell is wrong with the three of you? If you're looking for someone to fight, I wouldn't mind kicking your asses right now."
Dalton couldn't sit still any longer. These insults towards Kevin were getting way out of line. "Dalton, calm down. They're just jealous. Don't waste your time with those three idiots." Kevin managed to get Dalton to calm himself, then turned his attention to Mike and the others. "If any of you insult me one more time, I'll beat you up in the same way that I beat Carter." Everyone in their class instantly shut their mouths when they heard him. Many of them had witnessed what Kevin had done to Carter, so they didn't even dare to show any signs of mockery on their faces. Although Clarissa was quite the formidable opponent, Kevin wasn't someone that should be taken lightly either. While he was constantly dismissed by his peers for being a useless son-in-law of the Jones family, Kevin had proved everyone wrong so many times already. And even if all the people in their class gathered to fight him together, they still wouldn't be able to defeat him. Therefore, it was hard to say who would win or lose in the competition between the two of them.
"Kevin, I know you can do it. Besides, I placed a bet on you for $1 million, so if you win, I can make a lot of money. Dalton made an encouraging gesture. What? Wasn't the list of matchups just announced? Kevin asked in confusion. Yes, but half an hour ago, the host of the competition privately released the list of participants to some of the wealthiest individuals in attendance today to bet on. However, to keep some suspense, they didn't reveal the matchups until just now, so the betting lines have been blowing up ever since. I'm not really into betting, but I already placed my bet on you before I even knew who you were going up against. That's how much faith I have in you. Dalton proudly raised his chin. Kevin frowned and looked at him. So what are my odds? Dalton took out his phone and browsed through the thread. Let me check. Right now, it's plus 2,700 for you and minus 300 for Clarissa. What the hell? Is there some kind of mistake? Why is the gap so large between us? Kevin knew that Clarissa would be the favorite, but he still felt insulted by the huge disparity in their odds. Before Dalton could explain, Professor Murdoch, who was standing in the front of her class, had already spoken. Kevin, why are you still sitting there? Your matchup is coming soon. Hurry up so you still have time to get ready. I know, Professor Murdoch. Where should I go? Kevin answered casually as he stood up. Your match with Clarissa is right over there at the purple arena. Professor Murdoch pointed her finger to prevent Kevin from going to the wrong place. As Kevin walked over and made his way through the crowd, he couldn't help but think to himself, since Dalton bet $1 million on me, he'll make an extra $27 million if I win. So I must let him earn that profit for believing in me. Besides, I don't want anyone to look down on me ever again. So I should really stick it to them.
After finding out that Kevin's first-round matchup would be Clarissa Pratt, the top student from the Central Alternative Healing Academy, his classmates began to mock him and convince him to quit the martial arts competition. However, Dalton came to his defense and encouraged Kevin, even placing a bet of $1 million for him to win on plus 2,700 odds. This spurred Kevin's determination to win in order to reward Dalton for his belief and to prove everyone else wrong. On his way to the purple arena, Kevin was so locked in with his thoughts that he almost walked towards the wrong arena, despite already being directed there by Professor Murdoch. This made many people in the crowd laugh at him, and even he had an awkward expression on his face when this happened. Nonetheless, Kevin quickly shook it off as he took a deep breath to compose himself before entering the purple arena. At that moment, Clarissa was already waiting for him at the other end. She looked at Kevin with a serious face, then shifted her gaze towards the tall wooden poles between them. Clarissa wasn't expecting that they would have to fight while standing on these wooden poles. Although she was well-versed in martial arts and knife fighting through her training at the Central Alternative Healing Academy, everything she learned had focused on drawing one's strength from the ground. Now both of them had to stand high above the ground with just barely any space for their feet to rest on. Furthermore, each wooden pole was covered with a thick layer of grease, making it harder for people to stand firmly on it. And such, once they got on the poles and the signal to start was given, neither of them took the initiative to attack right from the get-go. Kevin, I admire your bravery to take part in this competition. I'm sure you'll be a worthy first opponent. I hope you can let me fight to my heart's content today, Clarissa said in a low voice. In her eyes, there was only the dagger in her hand and the opponent in front of her. You're not bad yourself. I've heard good things about your training as well. Kevin's expression was very serious. He could clearly see that Clarissa was very fit and kept her body in shape. And like a sharp dagger hidden beneath its sheath, she possessed the gaze of a fierce tiger ready to pounce. Thus, he knew not to take her respectfulness as a sign of weakness. I've never fought with an unarmed person. Please take out your dagger before we start. Clarissa didn't look down on Kevin in spite of his reputation as a useless son-in-law of the Jones family. On the contrary, what mattered to her was his fighting skills that she had heard about, and the opportunity to test herself against him made her cherish such an opponent. All right, as you wish. Kevin nodded as he drew the night dagger from his pocket. As soon as he did this, Clarissa suddenly made her move within a blink of an eye. Other than the powerful people on the platform and some of the professors amongst the crowd, no one could see how swiftly she drew her own dagger and jumped up high into the air. This immediately attracted everyone's attention as they praised Clarissa's skills. "Damn, Clarissa is so strong," someone exclaimed. "She's indeed worthy of being her school's top student. If this sets the tone for the rest of their fight, she'll definitely crush that good-for-nothing son-in-law, right?" Another person wondered as he watched Clarissa in awe. "The gap between those two is really huge. It seems like there's going to be no suspense at all in this battle. That piece of trash Kevin will definitely lose," the onlooker beside him mocked. Even those who had witnessed Kevin's fighting skills during previous encounters couldn't help but shake their heads. With just one move, Clarissa's performance had already convinced everyone of the outcome. Meanwhile, as he watched this scene unfold in front of him, all the hair on Kevin's body suddenly stood up in fear. He instinctively turned around and used his hands to protect his back. "Everyone look! Clarissa has already taken the initiative to strike first. Can Kevin block her attack?" the host loudly remarked. In the next second, a clear sound was heard across the entire venue as the crowd gasped around them. At the same time, Clarissa's eyes widened with surprise. As she landed on the wooden pole behind Kevin, she complimented him. "I'm impressed by your quick reflexes. You managed to block my dagger strike to your back." "Not bad, right?" Kevin smiled, trying to hide the worry on his face. "Unfortunately, this is a battle, so we can't be too friendly any longer." Clarissa's voice fell. She then used her dagger to cut down the wooden pole that Kevin had been standing on. Immediately after, the wooden pole broke apart, forcing him to jump onto another pole. Because he did this quite abruptly, he almost slipped upon landing. Luckily, he managed to regain his balance before Clarissa made any further moves. "Each wooden pole in the purple arena is 15 feet tall. According to the rules, whoever lands on the ground first will be the loser," the host explained. At just that moment, Kevin began to take things more seriously. If he wanted to stand a chance against Clarissa, he had to quickly come up with something. He then decided to knock down a couple of wooden poles beside him to distance himself from her, kicking one with his right leg and hitting another with his left hand. This seemed to have made him regain his confidence in competitive fire. "You're very strong. Looks like you're ready to fight me now." Clarissa, who had retreated a few steps, slightly smirked at Kevin. "Let me see how good you are then." This time it was Kevin who made the first move as he jumped into the air and charged towards Clarissa. "Good!" Clarissa shouted excitedly. She held her dagger tightly and followed suit. Their two daggers clashed in the air, creating intense sparks. As their sparring continued, their moves were so in sync that it seemed as if Kevin and Clarissa had known each other for a long time. With one blocking the other and vice versa, they were evenly matched for some time. Watching from the highest platform, Wayne Ford and Paul Vaughn from the Central Alternative Healing Academy couldn't help but nod their heads while their eyes were fixed on the two people fighting in the arena. "You've really trained a good student, Paul. Clarissa's skills are already truly special. If she continues to train hard, the sky's the limit for her potential," Wayne praised with some envy. "You flatter me too much, Wayne. Same goes for your student." Although Paul had a slight smile on his face, there was a strong trace of worry in the depths of his eyes. He could only relax and brag if Clarissa was declared the victor over Kevin. Back at the Purple Arena, Kevin and Clarissa had briefly separated. Clarissa was panting heavily as she tried to catch her breath. She looked at Kevin with eyes full of determination. Clarissa was only a teenager when she started studying at the Central Alternative Healing Academy. She had been training directly under her mentor, Paul, who was the headmaster of the organization. Through hard work and dedication, she slowly earned her reputation as his top student in martial arts and knife fighting. Thus, there was a lot at stake here for the both of them in terms of proving that the Central Alternative Healing Academy was not just a top 10 organization, but the best of them all. However, despite Clarissa's years of experience and achievements over Kevin, she began to feel that it was going to be difficult to defeat him for some reason. "That's it. Playtime is over. I have to get serious now." After Clarissa said this, she closed her eyes as her dagger suddenly slipped from her hand and landed right between her feet. Seeing this, many people in the crowd were perplexed. "What is Clarissa doing? Does she already want to surrender?" "That can't be the case, right? This battle was just about to get good." Someone reacted in disbelief. "Is that useless son-in-law really that strong?" Another onlooker speculated. As the crowd continued to discuss, Kevin frowned. He could clearly feel that Clarissa was just getting started. He knew that she was digging deep within her soul to channel a much stronger and ferocious persona, and he was starting to doubt whether he would still be able to handle that side of her. Just then, Clarissa opened her eyes once again. Upon doing so, she picked up her dagger and threw it forcefully in a circular motion before catching it back once it had fully rotated. All of a sudden, every wooden pole that was still standing was cut in half. "Paul, did she just use the halo technique? Looks like your student has really learned a lot of advanced skills from you," Wayne said with a great praise. Meanwhile, as Ariana watched from the crowd, she couldn't help but let out an evil smile. After last night's encounter, her hatred towards Kevin had already reached a boiling point. Therefore, she wished that Clarissa would take the opportunity not just to defeat Kevin, but kill him once and for all. "Oh, she's only learned a little bit." Paul's mood brightened up as his worries were swept away. Now that Clarissa had used the halo technique that he had personally taught her, he was sure that Kevin would definitely lose today. With Clarissa about to make her next move, Kevin held tightly onto the night dagger and placed it in front of his chest so that he could face her attack head-on. However, he wasn't sure if it would be enough protection against the power of the halo technique. If Clarissa's dagger could cut through so many wooden poles using it, Kevin felt as if his entire body could just as easily be cut in half in the same manner. "Clarissa is so powerful. Looks like that piece of trash Kevin is dead for sure this time." Lionel scoffed with a vicious smile. "He deserves to die for being so arrogant." Mike spat on the ground in disgust. At the same time, Lily, who was also watching Kevin from the crowd, couldn't bear to see her husband like this. Her heart felt heavy as she tightly clutched the edges of her seat. Similarly, Phoebe stood up from her seat as she waited to see what would happen next. Her face was filled with worry, but she couldn't keep her eyes off of Kevin. Suddenly, Kevin had a light bulb moment as something clicked in his mind. If Clarissa could harness the power of her inner strength and couple that with her training, then he could surely do the same. After all, he'd taken a lot of herbal pills that improved his own strength, including the crystal pill from the Night King yesterday. If he succeeded in doing that, then this could be his chance to prove himself worthy of the Night King's mentorship, as well as the night dagger that he had been given. As Kevin closed his eyes, a boastful smile appeared on the corner of Clarissa's mouth. "Now that you've seen the power of the halo technique, are you ready to surrender now?" Deep down, Clarissa didn't actually want to cause any deaths. After all, Kevin was also just a student at the Healing Arts School and not an actual enemy, and this competition was only meant to be a showcase of their skills. However, just as Clarissa thought that Kevin was about to give up, she saw a familiar look in his eyes when he opened them up again. Her face suddenly changed when she realized why. Shortly after Clarissa had drawn enough inner strength, she used the halo technique with her dagger, which cut all the surrounding wooden poles in half. With such a powerful technique at her disposal, Kevin was seemingly on the verge of defeat. However, he suddenly realized that if he could also channel his own inner strength in a similar fashion, then he would stand a chance against Clarissa. With that, Kevin closed his eyes. Just as Clarissa thought he was about to surrender, her face changed when she recognized the familiar look in his eyes once he had reopened them. "I finally succeeded," Kevin exclaimed. He had started looking into exploring his untapped strength through meditation about a month ago, but up until now,
He had never been able to achieve the level of clarity in his mind, body, and soul to unlock it. Now that Kevin finally understood how to do that, he was suddenly excited to test his strength. Trying to recall what Clarissa had done earlier, he threw the night dagger in a circular motion. True enough, it cut all the surrounding wood poles in half once again before he caught the dagger with his hands. Upon seeing this, Clarissa's jaw dropped. How did Kevin perform the halo technique on his first try? Without any training, she thought to herself. While Clarissa's sudden display of strength earlier had turned more than a few heads, it wasn't a complete surprise given her years of training. However, everyone was shocked when they saw the same change happen with Kevin. Wasn't he relatively new to all of this? This made Paul stand up from his seat.
How is that possible? Did your professors teach him this?
Wayne simply smiled and shrugged, but his eyes had lit up. He didn't know what was going on either, but he was quite impressed with Kevin at the moment.
Since when did such a prodigy appear in our healing arts school?
Was Kevin hiding this all along? Ariana's face was filled with disbelief. This was quite puzzling. Kevin and Dalton had been seriously injured by her last night. However, not only were they both fully recovered today, but Kevin had also become much stronger. Could it be because of that mysterious figure from last night? At the same time, Nadia Alexander had been talking to Harley Shepard. Suddenly, she said, I wonder if Kevin would reconsider joining the Herbalist Society. Although Nadia's voice wasn't particularly loud, it was more than enough for Wayne to overhear her. He knew very well who she was, and the people from the Herbalist Society behind her were even more highly regarded. Although there were so many students in the Healing Arts School, there wasn't anyone who caught their interest until now.
Why the sudden interest in our student? Harley asked Nadia.
Harley, there's something you don't know. Kevin produced the best pill during the herbalism contest. So in a sense, he already has the qualifications to enter the Herbalist Society. I actually offered him a spot before, but he wasn't interested at the time. Nadia explained as she watched Kevin, who had resumed fighting with Clarissa again.
Wait, wasn't another student declared as the winner? The one Wayne had been directly mentoring?
Harley Shepard asked curiously. Yes, but Kevin was the real winner, Nadia admitted without going into further detail. Harley was stumped. The Herbalist Society always did things with integrity, not to mention that it was their family's herbalism contest. If the real winner wasn't declared, wouldn't it damage their reputation?
It seems like there's something else hidden behind all this. I wonder what her reasons were, he thought to himself.
By now, the first round victors had already been decided in the other arena matchups. There was no doubt that the other representatives of the Healing Arts School were still inferior compared to their opponents, who had been trained in other schools. It had only opened not long ago, so this was completely understandable. However, Kevin's shocking emergence could change that perception. Every time Kevin would attack Clarissa with his newfound strength, it was like a flying dragon that was running circles around its prey. As such, Clarissa's face turned paler by the minute, and beads of sweat kept dripping down from her forehead. Struggling to defend herself against him, she could feel that her already depleted strength was about to completely dry up. At this moment, all of the high-ranking leaders watching from their platforms could see that the only reason why Clarissa hadn't fallen from her wooden pole was because Kevin wasn't in a hurry to deal with a spinal blow. Out of desperation, Clarissa suddenly took out a jade green pill from her pocket, and after a brief moment of hesitation, she decided to swallow it. In just 3 seconds, she began to feel much stronger once again. However, Kevin noticed that something was wrong. Clarissa was trembling nonstop. You should go down and surrender. I don't want to fight you any longer if you can't control your strength, Kevin warned. There's a lot at stake here for me. I can't afford to lose today, especially to a new student like you. Clarissa insisted as the strength in her body fluctuated more and more erratically. Even her voice had started to tremble as she spoke. Although the jade pill can double your current strength, it's only useful for quick bursts, as its effect only lasts for a short period of time. Furthermore, due to its unstable composition, it can be quite difficult to control.
and every time you take it, it'll cause serious damage to your body, Kevin explained. While he had to defeat Clarissa in order to move on to the next round, he also understood her dilemma and was worried for her well-being. "How do you know so much about the jade pill?" Clarissa asked in shock. "I've encountered it in my studies before, and if you don't release all that pent-up strength in time, in less than an hour, your body will break down from within, resulting in your death," Kevin said with a serious expression. Clarissa knew that Kevin was telling the truth. However, she felt that she was left with no choice. "I don't care. I haven't lost a single battle in all my years of training. If I lose to you today, I'll never be able to wash away the shame for the rest of my life." Clarissa used her trembling right hand to lift up her dagger once again. She then jumped into the air and shot towards Kevin like a cannonball. "Stop being so stubborn." Kevin took a deep breath and didn't retreat. He jumped up as well to meet Clarissa midair with the night dagger. Several sharp sounds echoed throughout the entire venue as the tips of their daggers kept colliding into each other. Because of this, everyone in the crowd couldn't help but cover their ears. When they finally distanced themselves from one another, both Kevin and Clarissa began to chase each other as they ran around in circles on top of the wooden poles. With their dagger-wielding arms outstretched low and sweeping across the entire arena, all of the remaining wooden poles were eventually cut open, causing both of their bodies to fall to the ground at the same time. According to the rules, this would have been a draw. Thus, both Kevin and Clarissa stopped fighting as they waited for the call to be made. However, the referee didn't stop them. This meant that the battle was still far from over. When Clarissa saw Kevin trying to argue with the referee, she capitalized on the opportunity to attack him with her dagger, which sent him flying into the air. Then she quickly turned around and ran towards him, hoping to maintain her momentum. Fortunately, Kevin managed to evade Clarissa's next strike at the last second, with the tip of her dagger almost slicing through his nose. This generated a huge uproar amongst the crowd once again. "I can't believe it! Clarissa just made a strong comeback." "Could it be that she was just warming up the entire time?" someone gasped.
Perhaps she didn't want her opponent to completely embarrass himself. If she had used her full strength from the beginning, that piece of trash Kevin would have had no chance to resist at all, Mike jeered.
"I hope she doesn't show him any mercy this time. He'll surely be dead when it's over," Lionel sneered.
"He deserves to die. He doesn't know his own limits, so he should rightfully face the consequences,"
Luther agreed. Kevin didn't care what the others were saying about him at the moment. He quickly got back on his feet and stood up. Just as Clarissa was about to strike again with her dagger, he used his night dagger to slash her forehead. While Kevin made sure that the cut wasn't lethal, it still caused blood to flow out, which made Clarissa a bit dizzy. At the same time, Clarissa's dagger had also stabbed into Kevin's waist. However, thanks to his body armor, he didn't suffer any injuries. With that, both of them finally stopped attacking at the same time. Soon after, the referee finally announced the result of the competition. It was deemed a draw.
"This guy is amazing,"
Wayne said as he shook his head in awe.
"Paul owes Kevin a huge favor. He deliberately chose to spare Clarissa's life. If not, the Central Alternative Healing Academy would have suffered a great loss."
Harley, who was now standing beside Wayne, added with a satisfied look as he glanced at Paul, whose eyes were full of appreciation and relief for his top student's survival.